Hello and welcome, my friends. I'm DR.SAPTARSHI and I'm going to share with you a very interesting area of prescription today, which is prescribing on cry sounds. In my previous sessions, you have heard how you can hear the cough sounds and prescribe. But here I'm going to share with you a few of the interesting cry sounds which I've learned as ancestral tips, especially by my illustrious father. And also I'm going to share with you a few sounds which I've heard myself and I'm going to share that with you. I always try to share the Comparative Materia Medica with you whenever I am sharing these things, and I'll share with you a few different cries and their comparative differences as and when we go on. You understand, with infants it's always very difficult in those cases because there's sometimes a scarcity of subjective symptoms, but then in those cases the cry sounds become important in trying to analyze the case. I'm always not saying that they can be the definitive factor in differentiating the medicines. They can always help you as you go ahead to make a differentiation in the remedies. Without any further ado, I'd like to start off. My first cry is a whimpering. When you come across whimpering, it's like a low, feeble sounds which is expressing pain. It's a low, feeble sound of cry. So they're not able to express properly their grief even in their cry. The top medicines for that are Aurum, Ignatia and Merk. You understand, with Aurum and Merk there are syphilitic remedies, and with syphilitic remedies it's always not possible to express their emotions. They're cold-blooded, they are always keeping it inside, they're always close-mouthed. So that's important for the syphilitic group of medicines. And even with the whimpering, with Aurum, with mercury, you'll find that low, feeble sounds of cry, as if unable to express their pain, as if unable to express their grief even with their cry. So that's my number one cry, my friends, is whimpering. My number two cry, my friends, which you'll find also quite common, is sobbing. Sobbing is a cry with catches of breath. So they're crying with catches of breath, and that sobbing with catches of breath is always the top medicine, is Ignatia. Now whenever you're trying to analyze a remedy like Ignatia, you'll find 4 varieties of cry in Ignatia. So I'll just quickly differentiate the Ignatia expressions of grief. So with Ignatia, you can always find number 1 is whimpering. As I shared with you, they're unable to express their grief. So that low, feeble sound of cry. You can find an Ignatia where there is sobbing, as I mentioned just now. So that you can find. You can find an Ignatia where there is silent grief, where they're not being able to express their grief, and the only way they express their grief is sighing. So that's the only expression of grief with Ignatia's silent grief. And those Ignatias, the Ignatia is always followed up with natrum mute. So that's the complementary chain whenever you have that silent grief. And you can have a 4th variety of Ignatia, which is also another variety of cry, is wailing. That loud, expressive, hysterical cry. Whenever you analyze the word hysterical for Ignatia, you can always find different varieties of hysteria. One Ignatia will give you a globus hystericus, a lump in the throat. Other varieties of Ignatia may become unconscious. Another variety of Ignatia where there is wailing. So they're crying very, very loudly, where you can find that wailing with Ignatia. And I will add another 5th one to that, where in Ignatia you can find the laughing alternates with weeping. So the laughing alternates with weeping. So you see, the cry is merging into the laughter, and that's also a hysterical manifestation of Ignatia, where the crying is alternating with weeping. Other medicines for that, other top remedies for that, you have that in Pulsatilla, you have that in Coffea, you have that in Platina, You have that in natramure and obviously Ignatia. These are your top 5 remedies where the laughing alternates with weeping, or the laughing merges into weeping, or vice versa. So that's the hysterical varieties of Ignatia, which is very often found in the Materia Medica. So I shared with you, number 1 was whimpering, number 2 is sobbing, number 3 is wailing, which is also obviously one of the top remedies is Ignatia, and number 4 you can find the laughing alternating with weeping as well with Ignatia. My next variety, my friends, is very interesting type of cry, is number 5, which I call as a piteous moaning. Now when you think of the remedy chamomilla, Mom, I want this, I want this, I want this, I want this. So the piteous moaning, it's a whining restlessness with chamomilla. Please give me this, please give me this, please give me this. So as if the cry is expressing that whining, that what he's trying to express through his cry. So it's a piteous moaning. We call that as a whining restlessness. And that you can find obviously with chamomilla, who are very uncivil, who are always better by being carried. So whenever you're trying to analyze chamomilla's cry, do always look for that constant tone of moaning, as if that cry is trying to express, Mom, give me this, Mom, give me this, Mom, give me this. So that's the piteous moaning which you find with chamomilla. Another cry which comes very close to chamomilla is the pitiful cry. How is it different? A pitiful cry is most commonly observed with Pulsatilla. So you don't have that moaning with pitiful cry, and Pulsatilla's pitiful cry is a cry which evokes sympathy. It tries to draw out your sympathy, and that's Pulsatilla's pitiful cry. So you think of chamomilla's cry, the Comparative Materia Medica, it's a pitiful cry, but it's a piteous moaning in chamomilla. But Pulsatilla's cry is just a pitiful cry, minus the moaning of chamomilla. And it will draw the mother's attention, it will draw the parents' attention, and he wants to be carried, and he wants to be given the love and affection which Pulsatilla is so much fond of. So pitiful cry is very important for Pulsatilla's cry. Now with Pulsatilla, there are a few other factors for Pulsatilla's cry which I like to highlight. Obviously you can get this with the Pulsatilla. Also, you do also remember for Pulsatilla, there are many debates about, is Pulsatilla better by crying or is Pulsatilla worse by crying? My understanding, or what I have learnt as an ancestral tip again, if you look in Stana Met chapter in Allen's keynotes, you will find with Pulsatilla that crying makes her worse. Pulsatilla is always better by sympathy and consolation, but with Pulsatilla crying makes her worse. Other remedies for that, you find that in Stana Metallicum, natramure, sepia and Pulsatilla, where crying makes her worse. So do remember, for Pulsatilla, they're better by sympathy, better by consolation, but crying is always making her worse. And another thing which I've learnt and which has always helped me in clinical practice, especially my young budding homeopaths who are starting off, do always remember, Clark mentions this in his Dictionary of Materia Medica, that Pulsatilla will always cry when telling her symptoms. When she is narrating her symptoms, Pulsatilla will start crying. This is my grief and this is my sadness. And the tears will flow, tears will come out. But in case of sepia, my friends, do always remember, sepia cries when pressed about her symptoms. So when you ask her, tell me what's happened, what has been the difficult part of your life, and then when you press sepia, sepia will start to cry. So Pulsatilla cries while narrating her symptoms. That's a very important differentiation clinically, whereas sepia will cry when pressed or asked about her symptoms, which is also quite important to understand. So with Pulsatilla, you can have the pitiful cry. Crying makes her worse, but consolation and sympathy makes her better. But do also remember, for Pulsatilla, Pulsatilla will cry when narrating her symptoms. So that's very important for Pulsatilla's cry. My next one in this list, my friends, or number 7 in this list, is a constant whining and complaining. A constant whining and complaining, and that you will find that constant whining and complaining, and that is mostly found with tuberculinum and cinna. You understand the difference with chamomilla here. Chamomilla is a piteous moaning, that I want something. That's chamomilla. But with tuberculinum cinna, they may not want anything, but it's always that constant complaining. Obviously, you have other symptoms to differentiate the remedies. Tuberculinum will have a lot of behavioral temper tantrum. Mom, I want this. So that kind of behavioral temper tantrum you'll find with tuberculinum. But obviously with cinna's complaining, you can find the voracious appetite. You can find the constant rubbing and digging the nose with desire for sweets. So there are always obviously differentiating factors. But when you hear that kind of a cry, you will be guided towards these two remedies. With further symptoms, you can always differentiate. So that's the tuberculinum cinna cry, where you have the constant whining and complaining. My number 8 cry, my friends, is a cry which is a protesting cry, but a cry without tears. You can find that with children quite often, a cry without tears, but it's a protesting cry. As in trying to protest, but there are no tears in my eyes, and it's a cry which is coming from the throat, and there is hardly any emotions or hardly any tears. A cry with lots of protests without any tears, and that's always a calcaria carb cry. So cry with lots of protests but hardly any tears, and that's very important for a calcaria carb cry. And that is very important with calcaria carbs cry. My number 9 in this list, my friends, is another very interesting cry, which is a growling like a dog. So you can find a little bit of growl like a dog, especially when there is a deep bass to the voice. So there's a deep growl to the voice, and your top remedies for that is belladonna and lycopodium. When there's a growl, so that growl you'll find with belladonna and lycopodium. My number 10 in this list is the cry encephalic. Cry encephalic is the shrill cry of children with brain trouble, especially when children are down with meningitis or any meningeal fever or any brain disturbances, and the shrill cry which is expressing their pain. That shrill cry is the brain cry or the cry encephalic. You have quite a few medicines, but from my understanding, the top medicines in this list is apis, belladonna, helleborus, zincum, cicuta virosa. All are brain remedies where you have this shrill cry, and that's a typical brain cry or cry encephalic, which is very, very important with these 5 remedies. You understand, obviously this is not the keynote symptom, but they can always help you in guiding to come up with a prescription in different cases. My number 11 in this list, my friends, is another very important and interesting cry. Is a shrill cry which is observed at night, and especially with infants 6 months, 8 months year old. It's like a scream or a high pitched sound, especially with infants at night. So it's a shrill cry, but not that piercing cry which you have with cryencephalic, but it's a shrill cry, and that is mostly observed with Jalapa. Jalapa is a very interesting small remedy for children. You'll find in Jalapa they're good all day but cry all night. So when you come across that shrill cry, when you come across that scream, that high pitched cry, especially at night, and that is very, very important with Jalapa. A very interesting medicine, especially for infants, which can help you for children who are good all day but they cry all night. So these are a few of the interesting cries which I've tried to share with you. There are a few interesting clinical tips which I'd like to also share with you. Other than this, you have certain remedies where you'll find they cry from music. So weeping from music, our top medicine for that. You have that in Ambrogracia, you have that in Graphitis, you have that in Digitalis, you have that in Sabina, Natrum carb, Creosote, where you have the crying from sad music, which is quite important, and also Thuya. So weeping from music is very important. Pathak in his repertory mentions that infants who cry continuously, you can think of two important medicines. So infants cry constantly. Pathak in his repertory mentions that his top medicines are Thuya and Syphilinum for infants who cry continuously. So these are obviously some of the important medicines. If you think of Natrum group, obviously Natrum is a group where you have cry is very important, especially for the grief. But do remember, for Natrum group of remedies, either you can have a weeping from music, obviously. Natrum group of remedies weep when alone. Natrum group of remedies are always worse from consolation. Crying makes them worse as well. Do also remember for that, for Natrum group of remedies. And they always weep when they're thinking of the past events, or when they're dwelling and brooding on the past events. Natrum group of remedies may cry, and there's a tear trickling down from the corner of the eye, and that is the inner grief of the Natrum group of remedies. So I've tried to share with you most of the remedies which I can think of for cry sounds. Obviously, as you understand, they are not definitive factors, but they can always help you in making a guideline towards a prescription, especially when you are stuck. Do remember that cry sounds can always come to your service. Thank you very much. Long live Hanuman, long live homeopathy.